I told you earlier, the 6 is by far the biggest type. Many would say it's actually 50% of the human race. Now, what creates that? Is it the insecure childhood? Is it the insecure world that makes people so fear-based? That so many people are so filled with fear? That's probably a piece. It's also the type that we divide into 2 major types. And I want to give you that right at the beginning, because they will feel very different. There is the phobic 6. Now that animal is the mouse or the deer. It runs as soon as there's danger. And then there's the counter-phobic 6, which would be Adolf Hitler, who pretend they're not afraid. You can normally see it in their eyes. You can see it in Hitler's eyes. They're scared to death of reality. And so what they decide to do is move totally into it and take absolute control of it. But it's all out of fear. The counterphobic 6 is often mistaken for an 8. But they're in fact very dangerous people, because they try to disguise their fear with bravado and false self-assurance. And I know, I can do, I'm not going to let anybody hurt me, right? I'm not going to let anybody get at me. Without healing, all of us are dangerous people, but that's very true of the counterphobic 6. I would say it's a smaller portion of the 6s, but they're the psychopathic, sociopathic personality in their worst form. That, these are the people who go in post offices and shoot everybody in sight. Very fear-based people who don't for a minute admit that they're afraid and deny their fear to themselves. Agere contra, we said in Latin, act against their fear, to disguise their fear from themselves, and do very, very destructive things. They're very attracted to the military, to guns, to militarism. These 2 boys at Columbine, I bet you anything they were 6s, counterphobic 6s. They're just fascinated by any talk of, Nazism or skinhead worldviews, where they focus the danger in one particular race, in one particular gender. I mean, a lot of these men who kill women. Women are the source of all evil. I've just got to rape and kill as many women as I can, and this will get rid of the evil in the world. That's what the counterphobic 6 does. He or she is a classic scapegoater to control their constant anxiety, and know that the 6 does have constant anxiety. They will find something to hold that anxiety. They are the bad people, that race, that religion. They are evil. I am good. And now I am doing a good thing for the world by eliminating them or killing them. And inside of their mind, remember, they're all in their heads, the heart of the head space, there's no corrective possible, no way you can get in. It's all a self-validating system inside of their own brain. Notice how many of these mass killers are loners who live in little cabins somewhere and just justify their entire worldview. So it's the 5 come to a very sick, paranoid level. If you want the description of the 6 psychologically, it is the paranoid type, who sees danger everywhere. Now, the much more common form, thank God, is simply the phobic 6. And I'm sure there's a lot of you in this room. They're everywhere. They're lovely people, all right? They're naturally humble. They're naturally teachable. They're naturally loyal. God, if you're married to a 6, my sister is, she always says, oh, I'm so glad I'm married to a 6. And he says, you should be. I'll be faithful forever. I mean, 6s are faithful, loyal friends and partners. Once they decide to trust you, you got a friend for life. And that's what's so beautiful about them. I mean, everybody else can turn against you. If they've decided you're their friend, you'll be their friend. And they will stick with you, and even when other people might say bad things about you. Because that loyalty comes from a deep, deep place. But to be honest, it also comes from a place of fear. And this is what's so hard for them to recognize. That the world is a scary place. And the only way I can overcome that fear is by aligning myself with another person, or a strong person, or a strong institution, or a strong country, or a strong military, especially religion and military, they are attracted to. It's no surprise that we had all these churches written on the front of the church, Pro Deo et Patria, for God and the fatherland. Because the two go together in the six's mind. That those are the ultimate security systems. My country will always protect me, and my God will always protect me, not the other people, just my religion, And that's the delusion that his fears or her fears lead her to. They often can avoid their own delinquency, their own darkness, by seeing it over there and attacking it over there and killing it over there. They love to think of themselves as orthodox and true and conservative in the best sense of the term. And it can be the best sense of the term, but it can also be the worst sense of the term, where my conservatism is nothing except self-security, protecting myself. The country is Germany, and when my book first came out in German, before it came out in English, not that I wrote it, Andreas did in its final form, but I remember the first trip I went over there after the book had come out. I said, oh my God, I don't think these Germans are going to like being called sixes. In all my subsequent trips, I've never had a single German disagree with me. They said, that is our country. And you do not understand the German type unless you understand the predominant, all-pervasive nature of fear. And aligning yourself with absolute systems. That's why you create the German philosophers with final explanations for everything. The final explanation, the very phrase that Hitler used, is the search in the security-seeking mind. It can't deal with ambiguity. Isn't it interesting that we even use the word Angst, the German word for fear, to describe this inner, all-pervasive insecurity? And I must say, in the German, it has taken on the probably stereotype that many of us have had of the German people. I'm German by background, so I guess I'm free to say this. The Achtung, this is the way it is, no more discussion, right? You've got to know that's a front. That's a cover. Don't believe it. Don't believe it at all. And I think that's why this book, my first one, ended up, it's now in every fourth house in all of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And they just couldn't understand why it sold so big. Well, I think that's the reason. The German people have been trying to find a way out of why did they keep doing this? Why the First World War? Why the Second World War? Why the skinheads? Why this always dividing the world up into the good guys and the bad guys? Well, the six gave them a way to understand that. And I would like to believe gave them a way out of it. That we are fear-based people. And that fear leads us to this idolization of militarism and, until very recently, the idolization of religion. But always looking for absolute religion. It's no surprise the Reformation began in Germany, too. We've got the answer. And Luther did, in part. But then it becomes another absolutism, and pretty soon we've got the same problem all over again. That's simply the nature of religious reform. So it creates dictators. It creates tyrants who expect absolute loyalty, who will demand absolute loyalty. Sixes don't like, in their unhealthy state, to look at you eyeball to eyeball, because they know you'll see their fear. And you will. I can see it in George Bush's eyes very easily. I'm sure he's a six, as his father was. It's very interesting. Both of them are sixes. But if you look at George, he's trying so hard. He wants to speak with authority, but the natural authority is not there. And I'm not trying to be political. I'm trying to be enneagrammatic. The natural authority is not there. You can hardly believe it, that he really believes it. What you're picking up is the six energy. the tremendous self-doubt inside of him, and the overcoming of it by bravado. Although I basically think he's a phobic 6. I don't think he's really counterphobic, although he shows some of that in his readiness to kill and the capital punishment in Texas and the wars. That gives him the sense of being in control and being absolute. They say, maybe somewhat unkindly, 6s are either at your feet or they're at your throat. And I know over the years, because the Catholic Church tends to gather an awful lot of 6s. Whenever you have a big security system, you will gather a high degree of 6s. So because I don't always say things in the way that Catholics are used to, over the years, I've had a lot of 6s attack me in the vestibule after Mass or after a conference or the hate letters. And you can feel that they're at my throat. I mean, they just want to kill me. Because talking this way utterly undercuts their security system. And I don't mean to be attacking 6s especially, although my spiritual director who taught me the Enneagram way back in the 70s, he said, "Richard, you wanted me to tell you why you became a priest?" And I said, "Why?" And he says, "One's become priests to change the 6s who've controlled the priesthood for too long." Because the 6 is all into conformity, the laws, legalism, ritualism. You don't break the laws. We only believe the law insofar as it works. When it doesn't work, we're sort of like 3s in that regard too. Then we don't have much use for it, which can make us rather righteous. What else can I say about the 6? Some people say, to give a childhood explanation, that they didn't have reliable authority as a child. Don't make too much of that. But I think we're probably producing more 6s than ever when I see the rise in fundamentalism. When you grow up in an insecure world where everything is in flux and everything is changing, there is the psychic need for something solid, something authoritative, something certain, something clear. So is it any surprise that the religions that are growing are the religions with absolutes? The only religious communities growing are not the Dominicans and the Franciscans. The orders that are growing are these very conservative groups that have an absolute, immediate answer for everything. And that appeals to the young man under 25. It also appeals to the 6. They said to me in Germany last time, they said, if the Catholic Church keeps going the way it's going, the only people left in it 50 years from now will be 6s, right? And there's people with a high need for authority, certitude, structure, and answers for everything. Not people for a journey, especially a journey of faith, which demands not knowing, not being certain. You have to be able to maintain and hold a certain degree of anxiety and ambiguity to be a person of faith, as far as I'm concerned. And we're not teaching that anymore, at all. And the young men coming to be priests are all boys. I understand when they grow up, and they need it. I had it in 1940 and 1950, Kansas. They didn't have it in the 1970s and 1980s. So I can't hate them for it, but they have this tremendous need for absolutes. And there's an extraordinary amount of young 6s who are becoming priests. What that means for the church and the rest of our lifetime, I don't know, but I don't think I'm going to fit in, because I just don't have the need for all that. And I don't mean to be arrogant. The only reason I don't have the need for all of it is because I had it once. Do you follow me? I had certitude, authority, a very reliable authority structure from my mom and my dad. It gave me psychic groundedness. So when the 60s came, fine, no problem. I know who I am. Most people, when they don't know who they are attracted to the 6 kind of stuff, and I want to say it this way, even when they're not 6s. Okay? And maybe that's why people are saying that it appears half the world is 6s. Because we just have an enormous portion of the human race today in the Muslim world, in the Jewish world, and in the Christian world who are demanding absolute clarity, absolute black and whites. And this does not bode well for our future politics or worldview. But I say it in this context because this is, for me, maybe one of the strongest examples of the political implications of this teaching. That if we can expose some of these demons, if we can expose some of these lies, maybe we're actually going to, unfreeze a lot of frozen people. So, any questions on the 5 or 6? Yes. Animal. The rabbit, remember, or the deer, or the mouse. And the counterphobic animal is the rhinoceros. I don't know rhinoceroses, is that a word? Well, but apparently when they're afraid, they charge into you, right? So the rhinoceros for the counterphobic, the deer, and the mouse.
And the conversion experience for the 6?
The conversion experience for the 6, well, actually there's a number of them. That's probably why I didn't get into it. First of all, that they have to find an authority they can trust. I would still say that for all 9 types, the only way out is an authentic God experience. For all 9 types. But I'm going to say that very strongly for the 6. If the 6 meets the God who is their rock, their fortress, their deliverer, and I mean that on the experiential level, not just a verse in the Psalms, but I know there's someone holding me. There's someone believing in me. There's someone who's created me and who loves me and who is more me than I am myself. That's the way out of all 9 types. But it's the quickest way out for the 6. And these become the Oscar Romeros, who we present as the patron saint of the 6s. Those of you who know the life of the Bishop of El Salvador, you read his early letters and writings. He was a fragile, insecure, scared little priest who wanted to follow all the rules, and he did, and that got him promoted as the primary bishop in El Salvador. He wasn't bishop, was it a couple weeks, One of his major priests was shot, and that was a conversion experience for him that made him fall into the hands of the living God. He found his center in the last 3 years of his life. His sermons are some of the most courageous you could possibly imagine. It's almost like a man without any fear whatsoever. So a tragedy like that can do it too. That it makes you find your one absolute that you can rely upon. So you will stop relying upon outer authorities and begin to trust inner authority. Now that's the big movement. It has to move from outer authority to inner authority. And I know we Catholics especially have been warned against that. That's dangerous. Don't you trust yourselves. You just trust the priest and the Pope, That does not help anything. Does not help the coming of the gospel to tell you not to trust yourself. At a certain level in your life, brothers and sisters, that's all you're going to have. And if you haven't learned how to go to a solid place where you know it's not just you, but it's God in you and you in God, and I've got to do it now and pay the price for it, that'll be when you finally discover the meaning of faith. And I don't think we've taught our people in that kind of faith, that it will feel like I'm breaking the rules at that point. Do you understand? Like, oh my God, this is dangerous. Last week I used the example of the Austrian Franz Jägerstätter, who no bishop supported him in all of Austria in his opposition to Hitler. Not a single bishop. Not his parish priest. Not his wife. Not his children. Not his neighborhood. Not his town. We got one of our rooms at Tepeyac, our guest house, named after him. This little Austrian layman said, I cannot do it. It is wrong. Can you imagine the fear? And I was able to meet his wife there years ago, and she knows the Enneagram. She says, he's a 6. He was a 6, Yeah, he's a 6. Franz Jägerstätter found his place of truth in God, and even the bishops couldn't convince him he was wrong. Marvelous stuff. And Romero would be the other example. Yes.
Well, I'm 6, and I heard you use clarity as synonymous with certitude. And to me, there's a difference in a need for clarity versus a need for certitude.
There is. You're right on that.
How I'm seeing it also is that I see many of the types, such as the 8 and the 1, as black and white. And I know my dad knowing it. It's black and white. as a 6, it's very much the nuances. It's very much the grace, and it may be some of the insecurity that drives that, looking at the choices. But to me, I'm not black and white as a 6. I'm not looking for certitude, but I am looking
For clarity. I think thank you for saying it, you're coming across as a very healthy 6. Yeah, that is a healthy 6. And I think that's an excellent distinction. And I also agree with you, the 1 and the 8 are much more inclined to black and white thinking. It's just when the 6 aligns himself or herself with an authority, then he or she can get into black and white thinking, because they will not allow any self-doubt to enter the picture. But the search for clarity, I would say also, is one of the greatest gifts of the 6 and the 5, both of them. Thank you. Thank you. Yes?
Do 6s choose phobic 6s as their leaders? Or somebody like Rush Limbaugh, is he a phobic 6 or a clever guy who's manipulating 6s?
Now, my guess would be, remember, these are all guesses. I think Rush Limbaugh is an 8. I would assume. Yeah. Yeah, I would. No, I don't. Remember, you see your own fault in other people. 6s are not that trusting of other 6s. They see through it. They know that that person is basically afraid.
So why did Hitler rise then in Germany? It sounds a bit like the scared German people took a phobic.
Counterphobic 6, yeah. The answer for that, I don't know. All the social reasons why he was able to hold the persona together, but somehow he did. Yeah. Yes?
What would be more of the positive traits of 6?
Loyalty and courage. Loyalty and courage. In other words, they are very loyal to what they believe in, to their friends, to the groups that they're a part of. I would also say 6s and 9s are the most humble. There's a natural, the rest of us are so damn sure of ourselves. And thank God the 6s have this healthy self-doubt. Well, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe you're not seeing the whole picture. You wish other people were that way. Now, I know they take it to a toxic degree and subvert themselves by doubting themselves at every turn. But that initial healthy self-doubt, I wish all of us had it. Do you see? So, loyalty, courage, the courage of Oscar Romero, and the humility that comes from healthy self-doubt. Was there another hand over there? Yes.
I'm not sure I know the exact question. You said something about lack of commitment, or did I misunderstand you?
That was in the 5. The 5 is afraid of commitment. Yeah, not the 6. The 6 will be very committed, sometimes too committed. Yes? Mm-hmm.
The core need for a 6 would be security.
Security, yeah.
And the core need for a 5 would be knowledge.
That's right, very good. Forgive me if I didn't say that. I'm trying to say too much too quick. Yes?
You mentioned Limbaugh being an 8. Is that the only type that falls into substance abuse?
There are several who are most inclined toward addiction. The 9, because they can't get their energy. So they think drugs will do it or alcohol will do it. Many of the guys at the jail in my years here were 9s. The 2, because the 2 is trying to feed himself or herself from outside by other people's inputs, literally their food that they give us or their drink that they give us. It feels like love. I mean, the 2s joke about their love of chocolate very often, which they usually do love chocolate. But food in general becomes a medication for the 2, and that transfers to all ingested materials. That this will fill up my need for love. This food, this drink, these drugs, this alcohol. And the 7 is inclined toward addiction because they overdo everything, which we'll get to in a minute. The 8, I wouldn't say is especially inclined toward it, more than the other types. Yes, Judy?
You were saying you see a lot of 2-5 like marriages. Is there a number that 6s are good with? My request for outer authority here.
No, that's a good question. The most common thing I find is the original triangle of 3, 6, and 9. those types move between one another and beautifully balance one another. So very often 6s do find themselves attracted to 3s or 9s, and that's true of the other 2 also. 3s marry 9s, 9s marry 3s. Yeah. And please don't take that as absolute. You know, that's just, yeah, all right. Yes, Bob.
Would you list China as a country?
You know, some people have said 3 for China, too. I've never been there, so I don't know the exact energy. What were you thinking?
I was thinking 6.
Oh, well, there's a 3-6-9 movement, but it might be 6. And moving toward the 3, toward being very, yeah, might be true. All right, any other questions on those 2? Yes?
You mentioned the 4 moving to 5, presenting some sort of an issue.
The 4 being balanced by the 5 wing, and the 5 being balanced by the 4 wing. We'll get to the wings, I hope, still this afternoon.